All right, this is a return to the Korean Peninsula circa 1950. Specifically, we're doing the July 1950 communist phase. This is MDG's MacArthur's War. Uh, it does cover the Korean War for those who've been following here, the land battle, but there is a strategic view, here we go, where we do have the rest of the world in play, and it can escalate to Asian war, escalate to a total war. Hence, we see Europe, Korea, etc. involved. So, again, the communist phase. We're at the beginning of the communist phase. Here's the setup right now on the board. Actually, the North Koreans, in their attack, were able to secure Seoul, but both sides lost a lot of units, and their armor was able to get as far as Daejeon. And they came one hex short of isolating most of the Korean army, South Korean army. But they didn't, so the Koreans were able to potentially stream out and screen the rest of the peninsula, but the U.S. started landing their Far East divisions onto the Korean peninsula too, to try and aid the South Koreans in the defense. Right now, from an escalation point of view, here we go, the escalation ladder, which I explained in other places. We're at the incident level right now. First two turns of the game, you're not allowed to escalate, so we stay there. The most you can have, this is the replacements. The U.S. can have one air point. Last turn, though, or this turn is overcast, which basically subtracts one air point. Minus one air point for overcast, so there was no reason to buy that air point for one victory point. U.S. did buy the 7th Fleet to support their landing over here in, well, whatever that port is there. Ports, cities, and major cities give victory points. That's kind of why. And then they landed 2 divisions in Pusan, which actually the North Koreans are going to come up 1 hex short from Pusan this turn. That seems to be the story of their battle. 1 hex away from winning it all. And the U.S. did burn through 6 victory points because they brought on board 3 divisions. 1 BP they also had to use for 7th Fleet. They didn't have to buy the air point here. Next turn, escalation will be available, so very tempting on the UN side to escalate to police action. They've got to roll a 2 or higher. And then the Far East divisions don't cost as much. The Marines still cost 2. We can bring in some UN support. They get 2 air points. Everybody starts getting replacement points, but also the communist player can start mobilizing PLA army units on at least the Chinese side of the border. So if and when it does escalate to limited war, corresponding historically when the UN crossed the border, in hindsight may not have been one of the wisest decisions, because that triggered the Chinese then to cross the border with their troops into North Korea, slowly build up, and then the rest is history. But also on the plate is atomic bombs. So we'll see. But for this turn, the North Korean advantage is basically they've still got the 1 shift and no escalation per the scenario rules. Just to show you here. Yeah, my goal is double here. It's for me to learn the game. It's for me to, potentially this is kind of along with playing it, it kind of becomes a sort of tutorial for the game too. Shows you the game in action. So referring to the rules here for the scenarios, here it is. No escalation, and they've still got their 1 column shift now, the KPA. So that's still in effect this turn. So let's go ahead and move through the sequence of play. Here we go. So no escalation phase. This is just the UN part. This doesn't apply. There is no air phase for the communists. So we come to reinforcements. And the North Koreans can now use their replacement points and per the escalation table, they get 1 and an additional 1 if they own their capital, Pyongyang, which they do. So they're going to get 2 replacements. They could bring back units that were destroyed at reduced strength potentially, but for this one they're going to just go ahead and bring these up to full strength. Okay. The only requirement for taking replacements is you have to be in supply. This one is automatically in supply. It's on a rail line to a home city. And this one you got to be within 5 hexes of a rail line and then go to a home city. So both of these units are in supply, no problem. So now it's time for, coming back to the sequence of play here, strategic movement play phase. There really is right now no strategic movement because of where we are in the incident. The scope is South Korean, and we can't mobilize any Chinese. We've got to get here. And so there's not really anything to move on the strategic map for the Korean or the communist player. So then we'll move to the offboard conflicts. There aren't any. That's in case the war had escalated to Asia. Now we're talking about invading Formosa, attacking China on land, etc., and even Europe. But now we're going to go to the movement phase. And what I'm going to try and use is, again, what I kind of call the leaky zone of control. Zone of controls are either uncontested, which means there's no friendly unit there, so they pretty much stop everything. Or let's talk about these Koreans. Yeah, they stop everything. You got to stop when you enter. You can't move from zone of control to zone of control, etc. But this is unique to this game. Zones of control for movement are negated for units here. So, for example, let me just hide this real quick so I can see. Yeah, there's a river there. So let's say, for example, this unit could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the zone of control is negated by the 6-8, so it can go 6. This will be actually 6, 7 for the river, 8 for the rough. Okay, look at the terrain effects chart here, just to reinforce that. Yeah, rough, 2 MP. Cross a river, plus 1 MP. But by doing this, it can move here. The zone of control from this unit is negated by the 6-8. Then it can move here, and then it's got to stop. But now any follow-on units can continue moving through. So as an example, I'm going to take this guy and do what I just said. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And there he is. Now these two zones of controls are negated, right? So then, I had to decide, do I want to go here, do I want to go there? But what I'm actually going to do is, how far can that guy's going to stay there? This time I could use a 4-8. Yeah, let's do that. Do I want to use this guy? Sorry, strategy here. 1. So let's take this 4-8 for example. He can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, again. 1, 2, negated Zoc. 3, 4, 5, because crossing river and rough, but it's negated Zoc. 6, 7, 8. Okay. So basically we're building our line around here. Let's see. So then I would leverage this guy to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's the problem because he's crossing rivers each time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He could go to here. Or he could go to here. And then Taegu could not be used as a supply source, although Pusan still can. And again, my point, 1 hex short. He doesn't have the movement points to go further, so there's no reason to put him here to negate Zoc for units too far behind the lines. The problem is this river and rough here are costing MPs. So I think what I did was, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wow, if this wasn't rough, he could get all the way to Pusan. See, that's 1 hex short. If he could go here, I mean, if he could get to here, he could cut all the South Koreans off, but he can't. He can only get to there. So, see what we've got here. We're probably going to attack this unit. This one has a 1/2 AF, so that's kind of a problem. So we kind of got 2 or 1 here. And let's see, then we got to decide what kind of unit do we want to put here. And I think I'm going to put this guy. 1, 2, 3. Keep on Tejan. This unit's going to stay here. This unit's going to come down just to seal off the top. And then here's some other interesting moves. Now I got to think about, here I've got 3 to 1. And it's going to be a regular 3 to 1 because there's a 1 shift for rough, but then I've got the North Koreans have the 1 shift for the surprise attack. So I'm thinking here, the U.S. is going to land reinforcements. That's the biggest problem. There's always the Incheon kind of thing, so I do this. Now, right now, the scope is just South Korea, so I don't have to worry about them doing anything up here, at least for, we got to get 2 escalations before we can get to North Korea. So I don't have to worry about defending North Korea. This port is still owned by them. They could land right here. That could be ugly, so I'm going to move this guy here to at least contest if the U.S. decides to bring the Marines in or land. So with that done, I think we're set up here. Again, the South Koreans can still get out of here. We haven't cut. I'll have to analyze supply later. But it looks like, well, yeah, I can't get to this hex. If we can only get here, we could cut this rail line. 1 hex too far. Just, yeah, kind of like a bridge too far, a hex too far each time. So this attack will be, like I said, a straight 3 to 1. So let's see, and there's nothing else we're going to do. We've got our defenses here, 3 to 1 here. Don't really know if I want to advance afterwards. This one needs to stay here to try and keep these somewhat pinned. They can pull out this way, or they can try and attack and break out this way. So let's go for it. Let's find our combat chart here. There it is, and we're at a 3 to 1. Hopefully we don't get any more exchanges, but let's see what happens. 3 to 1, and the roll is 4. That's a good, nice kind of solid. Good, we didn't get the PX. 4 is a DR, okay, so they're going to have to retreat. And then the question is, we do have him surrounded by Zocs, but does this contest and give him a retreat route? And again, referring to the rules here, we see up here, units can retreat into enemy zones of control, but a step loss is incurred if the Zoc is uncontested. So there is some question, yeah, this guy can retreat then here, and he doesn't lose a point. Doesn't you lose a step, and then the question is, would we want to advance this guy here? Is there any downside to that? It does kind of block this from supply, but again, it's 1 hex short of killing this this line here. But what we will do is, I'll go ahead and retreat him. Advance after combat with this guy here. We want to keep the 6-8 forward. The 5-8 has to stay here, semi-pinning the U.S., and this one has to stay here, covering Tejan. So this is the only unit that could, from a positional point of view, advance after combat. To, I don't know, well, you can ask the question, does it make sense to put him here, leave him there? I'll just do that. So, no second guessing. Go with your gut. All right, that's the end of that turn of the movement phase. That's the end of the combat phase, and now we're at the end phase. Nobody's going to try and end the game at this point. So that will now take us to the August turn when all bets are off. No bonuses, escalation possible, etc. And we'll start with the UN turn. So, thank you for listening. Stay tuned. Next turn we'll see the UN response to the communists, well, getting almost to the bottom of the peninsula here. But is it strong enough? Will it last? Do they have the staying power? Especially with the U.S. coming on board with reinforcements, and the South Koreans still haven't been, yeah, like I said, one hex short. So, anyway, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next recording.